And what we found is that using evolutionary game theory, we can actually prove theorems. And the probability is precisely zero that any sensory system of any organism has ever evolved to see anything about objective reality as it is. Now, I should say, it's not that that means that anything goes in perception, right? If, for example, someone just emailed me today saying, "Does that mean that these are that just so that evolution has given us just so stories, right? Just so stories about reality?" No, no, no. They're not just so stories. They're useful stories. They're useful in the same way that your user interface on your desktop is a useful guide to the complicated circuits and software inside your laptop or whatever. If you had a just so story for your desktop interface, you wouldn't get anything done. So it's not just so there are important connections, but clearly what you see on your desktop in no way resembles the circuits and software and electronics inside your laptop, right? It doesn't resemble it whatsoever. It's a useful guide. It's not arbitrary, but it doesn't resemble it. And that's sort of what evolution did. It's given us space and time and physical objects as a useful interface. And so there are systematic connections between that interface and properties of objective reality. That's why it's useful. So there are systematic connections. It's not a just so story. And yet, nothing inside space and time as we perceive it in any way resembles the objective reality, in any more than the pixels on your desktop resemble the circuits and software inside your computer.
And I think your interface comparison it's such a wonderful example. It was such a clever thing to use as a comparison, because obviously, we live in a world of staring at screens these days, right? And so, whenever I've tried to talk about this thing, it's the first sort of example I give. Think of it in terms of your desktop, and you can suddenly see people's brains go, "Oh, right, okay, yeah, I see." So, can you just explain this analogy in very simple terms? And maybe I'll just kick things off, because I've been writing some stuff on my computer currently. I've obviously got a big, well, loads of Word documents haphazardly strewn all over my desktop interface. And if I was to drag it in the bin, that would be a problem. But that doesn't mean that there's either a bin there or a book there. It's all a representation of a far deeper and far more complex process, and that can just be scaled up.
That's exactly right. So if you're writing a book, for example, or some paper, and you see the icon for that paper or that book on your desktop, say it's blue and rectangular and in the upper left corner of your screen, it doesn't mean that the file itself in your computer is blue and rectangular and in the upper left corner of your computer. I mean, anybody who thought that I think no one is so naive as to think that. But if you thought that, it would be you complete misunderstanding of the nature of that interface. It's a useful guide to your computer, right? If you double click on that blue icon, you can open up your book and start working on it. And if you drag it to the trash can, you will lose your book. So so there are consequences. So you can't just say, oh, you don't see reality as it is. That means you can do whatever you want. Is that what you're saying? No, no, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that at all. If you
No.
see a snake, don't pick it up. If you see a cliff, don't jump off. It's a useful interface. It's just that none of it resembles objective reality. And
Yeah.
so the same thing is true of that blue icon. And so we have to take it seriously, but not literally. And that's
Yeah.
the key distinction. Evolution shaped us with sensory perceptions that were shaped to keep us alive. That from an evolutionary point of view, the goal of perception is to guide adaptive behavior. In other words, keep you alive at least long enough to reproduce.
Yeah.
So you better take your sensory systems seriously. But the logical error is we think, of course, because I have to take it seriously, therefore I must take it literally, right? Someone might say, well, look, if you don't think that hammer is real, if I hit you on the head with it, I mean, you'll know that it's real. Well, I'll know that there are serious consequences for misusing the hammer. Yeah, there are serious consequences. That doesn't mean that the hammer is literally real. in that form. It does mean that there is some other deeper reality that I don't want to interact with that way as expressed by that hammer.
Yeah.
Just like, again, as you mentioned, the trash can icon. That's something you want to interact with very, very carefully on your desktop. Don't drag stuff there willy nilly.
Yeah. And if we saw the Word document and the bin as they actually are on the computer, we'd never get anything done. And so it makes sense, therefore, that in terms of reality, the same is true. You know, if we saw things as they were, we would be completely stuck and unable to function. And actually, again, you've proved that to be true.
That's right. I mean, ultimately, when you drag your icon to the trash can and delete the file, what's going on are millions of bits inside your computer are being toggled in a particular special pattern. Now, if you had to actually toggle those thousands or millions of bits in exactly the right pattern to do it, I mean, you could do it, but instead of having it be such a simple thing, I just drag my file to the trash can. It might take you several days or years to
Yeah.
delete your file, and so that's why, again, evolution, in some sense, it keeps us alive because it hides the truth. The truth is too complicated. In my own view, frankly, it's infinitely complicated,
Yeah.
literally infinitely complicated, so that there is no way in some finite quote unquote time to deal with it. So shortcuts are absolutely necessary.
And am I right in saying so? Your mathematical equation again showed that people, or the more likely you were to see things as they are, the more you're going to go out of existence.
Yes, and I should maybe just give a little feel for that, and an objection that the two objections that are raised. So the feel for it is that, um, in evolution there are these things called fitness payoffs. That those are they sort of govern whether you're going to what happens if I eat, for example, a hamburger. If I'm not a vegetarian, there could be good fitness payoffs for me. I get energy and protein and so forth. But if I eat poison ivy, well, that's not so good for my fitness. So these fitness payoffs describe for each organism, in each action, and each state of that organism, what payoffs you might get in terms of the probability of surviving long enough to reproduce, basically. And what you can do is show that these fitness payoffs themselves have no information about that. They do not convey information about objective reality truth. The probability the that they will give you, that these functions themselves preserve information about the structure of objective reality. So I'll be very precise. The probability that a fitness payoff, which is some kind of function, right? It says whatever the state of the world and the organism, the action, and so forth, these are the fitness payoffs you'll get. That's the function, the payoffs that you'll get. So it's a function from the world, state, and action into the payoffs that you get. The question is, will that function actually preserve information about the structure of the world, the truth of the world? Technically, we call that, is it a homomorphism of the structures of the world? But just, does it preserve the structure? And what you can do is prove that in certain cases, absolutely it could. But what is the probability? Precisely zero. The probability in the limit is precisely zero. So yes, it could happen, but I would bet the farm that it's not going to happen. The probability is precise. So in other words, so the theorem is not that it couldn't possibly happen. The theorem is the probability is one that it won't happen,
Yeah.
or
Okay.
probability zero that it will happen, that we'll see reality as it is. So as a betting man, you can bet safely.